All right, the time is 3:30 and I'll call the meeting to order. I'll note that we have a quorum. Councilman Robbins, one of the admin representatives, is not here this afternoon. He has a conflict and he indicated to Mr. Young that he wouldn't be here today. So we do have a quorum. The second item on the agenda is discussion, possible action, and consideration of the minutes of the Edmond Regional Airport Board meeting held on October 10th, 2023. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes of October 10, 23.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion made, seconded, and laid upon the table. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The third item on the agenda is discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve the monthly financials. You have financials in your packet. Are there any questions of Mr. Young regarding the monthly financials?
Motion to approve.
There's been a motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion made and seconded laid upon the table. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Having received the majority of those elected or appointed to and constituting the board, the motion carries. Item number 4 is discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve the 2024 schedule of the regular airport meeting. This is the normal time, the second Tuesday of the month at 3:30 p.m. It's been printed and put in your packet. Are there any questions about those dates? Do you get all the dates correct? I did check them to make sure.
I did, they're good.
Against the calendar, they look like they're fine. Any questions? No? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion we approve the 2024 schedule.
There's been a motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion made, seconded, and laid upon the table. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the 2024 schedule of the regular airport board meetings signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Having received the majority of those appointed to and constituting the board, the motion carries. Item number 5 is discussion, consideration, and possible action to purchase an airport vehicle. Hopefully there will be discussion on this one. Yeah. Mr. Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Per the city purchasing policy, I'm compiled a list of 3 trucks to purchase for the airport that I plan on going before City Council next week, putting all 3 of those estimates before the City Council. The lowest quote in our the lowest quote in our recommendation to the City Council is going to be a 2022 Chevrolet Silverado, $1,500 at the price of $46,999. It has 11,024 miles on it. We were budgeted $59,000 for the purchase of this vehicle, actually before Shalon left the airport. But whenever I first came on board, I didn't have interest in starting and then immediately purchasing a $60,000 vehicle on behalf of the airport. But I'm happy to say that we've gathered those quotes now. Whenever we were looking at, some of the considerations we were looking at was to make sure that it was crew cab, because currently we would have to take the Kubota utility vehicle, which doesn't have any sort of winter kit, or our 2001 existing airport truck, which its air conditioning doesn't work and its heater is so-and-so on a good day. And so this truck would give us the ability to take future prospective airport tenants out on the airfield, or the OAC out into the airfield. So we're looking for something with a crew cab, 4-wheel drive capability. Let's see what else I have on that. At that price, we would also be able to add things like the aircraft radio, the holder for the radio, and then the lights atop, just to make sure that we were meeting the safety standards that we need at our airport. And hopefully we'll be able to save the city of Guthrie some money. So with that, I yield back to the chair.
Good job.
Any questions? No? Always amazes me how we'll spend the city's money. No questions.
Hey, you sound like you say you went under budget, so, hey.
Yeah, when we went and looked at them, a lot of them had leather seating. And I was like, we don't want leather seating, but I don't want it to be an absolute work truck either. We're going to use our existing truck as a maintenance vehicle. This one will primarily be used for just the morning airfield inspection, just have something nicer for that too. So.
We're on the vehicle buying kick at the council anyway.
We're on.
Might as well throw it in there.
Right.
Yeah, I did have some questions, but you answered them all pretty nicely, Katie. So my questions were really, the use of the vehicle, what was the purpose of the vehicle, but you've addressed that nicely. Thank you.
Since you brought it up, is there some reason that you don't like the leather seats?
Oh, it was just that it wasn't really, we love leather seats, but it's not something that our airport really.
I mean, they generally wear better than cloth for things like this.
Yeah, I just didn't want our, I pictured our, we have one maintenance personnel and he would be doing some airfield inspections as well. And he's out in the field a lot and anything could happen, on the runway with picking up a nasty piece of thought or something. I just didn't want him to have to get back into nice leather. I figured it would be a little bit above what we need for our needs here.
If there's no further discussion, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to purchase 2022 Chevy Silverado Crew Cab four-wheel drive.
Is there a second?
A second.
Motion has been made, seconded, and laid upon the table. Is there any further discussion? Not. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Having received a majority of those appointed to and constituting board, the motion passes and will be recommended to the city council to purchase the vehicle. Item number 6 is discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding wildlife perimeter fencing. Mr. Young.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this item was requested to be on the airport agenda, so I didn't want to take that individual's time, but I did want to speak just a little bit, a quick update on where we were on that. Since June of this year, the U.S. Department of Agriculture's trap northeast of runway 34 has trapped 12 deer since I began at the airport. They have continuous visual monitoring through their camera system that is by the trap. Airport staff regularly reports seeing deer on the early morning airfield inspections near the runway. According to our latest estimates on how much it would cost to fix the fence, it was anywhere between $700,000 to $900,000 was the estimate. And I'm sure as time moves on, that number is probably leaning closer to the $900,000 range. And so that's kind of where we left off last time in the July airport board meeting. But with that, I wanted to yield back to board member Goliath.
Well, it had been brought up, I thought at one time, about a smaller amount of money over a long period of time. That might be an option for us to consider that. Is that still open to discussion? Is that something we could talk about?
I think that the position of the Guthrie City Council is that that would be more feasible, and I believe that was also the position of the Edmond City Council, rather than one chunk would be to attempt to do this over a several-year period, since we have
Yes.
obvious places in the perimeter which are still, if you go to the west, still not fenced. So I think that was the move, and I believe that Councilman Williams and I had asked that that be put on our Public Works, sort of planning process for the next fiscal year, if I recall correctly.
That's correct.
So I think that's where we are in the process. I don't know that, given that there's any action needed on the item, but that we are continuing to look at it and address it and discuss with Edmund what the amount is that we'd be willing to each kick in to address that problem.
Question, is that an 8-foot chain link fence that we requested?
I believe that would be matching the existing fence that we have around it.
Okay. When I was in Colorado, I went up to Leadville, stopped by their airport, and the airport's, and I saw some other fences around the airport. It's like a 9-foot high fence, but it's more like a hog wire. I took some pictures of it. And so I don't know if we can incorporate that, if that would be cheaper than continuing with the chain link fence, something to check into, if anybody thinks that's.
It's interesting you brought that up. The McAllister Airport has recently started installing, very similar to like a commercial hunting areas fence, rather than the chain link. And so we'd actually talked to the Aeronautics Commission about that last week to see if we could get some of their tabulations of bids to see if perhaps that would be a cheaper route to go if that's the aesthetics that the board decides they want. And perhaps on the east side where there's not fence now, and it's not going to be very visible, that might be an alternative solution. And then back over here on the west side, we might try to match existing district. aesthetics.
I can't get to come up, so anyway, but you know what I'm talking
Yes, sir.
about. Okay.
4-inch square field fence, they call it a 4-inch.
Yeah, about that, yeah.
If you have some pictures of what they did at the other airport that you could share with the board.
I'll see if I can get
for the Next
those.
meeting, I think that would be beneficial for us to look at.
I'll check with the Aeronautics Commission.
Okay. All right. So no action will be taken on item 6. Item number 7, discussion, consideration, possible action on airport hangar use and leasing policy. Director Young.
So I'm still working on a draft of this policy. I've been not only using the FAA's regulations on the aeronautical and non-aeronautical uses of hangars, but also looking at other airport hangar use and leasing policies as well. In your packet, I've included a rates and charges survey that Max Westheimer Airport down in Norman completes annually. It's actually it's a funny project. They typically have their intern complete it annually. They really compile a lot of data that other airports are using to establish their lease rates. So that might be something we want to look at, just to compare what our lease rate is per square foot. Ours is currently 22 cents per square foot for new development. That's what you voted on. You've seen in 23C, 23E, probably the other hangars in the corporate. Well, we haven't done 23E yet. The 23C and the other hangars over there in that corporate hangar development area. That's kind of the rate that's been brought before the board. Keeping with that, we want to look, one thing mentioned in the last airport board meeting was looking at changing that lease rate. And a variety of factors are involved in setting that rate, such as land availability, which obviously at our airport is very little at the current present moment. But also, what airports your size are charging, future valuations and growth, et cetera. Whenever we're looking at that, you can see that Jones Riverside Airport, which is considered the busiest airport in the state as far as operations go, they're charging 33 cents per square foot. That obviously wouldn't make sense for an airport like ourselves. Ours is actually pretty competitive. Some airports around our size are up to 26. Some are as low as 15 cents per square foot. While I don't have an actual draft I brought before you today, I wanted you to just have this chart just to kind of keep that in mind as we're moving forward in the process, and even just as a reference. And then as for the non-aeronautical use of hangars, I will be adopting the language put forth by the FAA, and I wanted to make note that in the last meeting, a board member brought up the building of experimental aircraft, and I've worked to incorporate that language they put in for kit-bill aircraft inside of hangars as well. And I definitely believe this policy will be a great benefit to the airport, and hopefully by the December airport board meeting, I'll have something in front of you to review.
All right, so I don't think we need any action on that, considering that we don't have a document yet. If you just keep working away on that, that would be, I think.
Hey, Caden, also mechanical and manufacturing uses, would you make note of that? Because, thank you.
So no action taken on item number 7. Item number 8, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding an update to hangar 23C. And I believe you shared an email with us, is that correct?
Yes, so as of this afternoon, I am in receipt of a letter from Mr. Ripley regarding the anticipated dates of his construction schedule for Site 23C. City Attorney Billy Wheeler sent out a letter and he has since responded. I haven't actually had too much time to look over the letter. I believe he's incorporated all of the dates that were requested from the board. He has, at this moment, he has poured a concrete slab foundation. There has been utility locates out at the site last week. And then just this week, I've had some people come and wanting to take construction equipment away to start new processes. So that's kind of where we're at with Mr. Ripley.
It did appear that he did kick it into high gear after the last meeting, I noticed. Because I had to go over there to visit with a mechanic, so I have noticed that there's been substantial progress made on that site.
I do have a question on his schedule. The 4th item down here on his schedule is concrete apron, completed in December of '24. Is that a typographical error? Did he mean 23?
I think it's-
Or is he talking about this 14 months out?
Or is that 2/15? Is that,
12? Yeah.
I mean, it looks like that could be a typo, a scrivener's error, and he was estimating February 15th. Is that what we should?
You know, Ivy came in, you can see from the email, Ivy came in receipt of this letter, or this
Yeah.
response at 1:44 today. I can get back with him and check with him on that date.
I would guess that it's,
14 months is unreasonable.
Yeah,
yeah.
surely that's an error, surely.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's a
Because
scrivener's
everything
error.
else is.
Because that would be one of the,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just don't want to assume that, right?
Yeah, I read that as 2/15.
Hope so.
Yeah, so we'll follow up on that. So I don't think there's any action needed.
If I could point out real quick though,
Yeah.
I think there's still some frustration on his lack of communication. We didn't get this until 1:45 today. And it wasn't until Kate and I talked, and Kate then picked up the phone and called him that we got this. I don't know that we would have got this if he hadn't called him. I mean, I don't think he had any intent to respond. I think we need to stick on it because this is, at some point, is also disrespectful to the airport.
I agree.
And this board. And he's also been advised that it would be good if he was here for the last 3, if not 4 meetings. He's also chosen not to come address this in person, so. We do have a plan, but it's still frustrating.
And I take it that if we have another issue, you'll send another letter, or something, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. So I don't think, given that, and with the clarification, I don't know that there's any formal action needed on the item. Item number 9 is presentation update on the transition of fixed base operator. Director Young.
Yeah, I'll be turning this item over to Mr. Bob Bartman, owner of 59 Aviation, and his team, who will be speaking on the upcoming transition.
Sure, so you guys all know me, I've been here a bunch. Some of you haven't met College, where he's with Airside FBO. His brand is Apex Jet Center. He's been on the ground since day one. Kyle, kind of tell them about your background real quick, for those that haven't met you.
Yeah, so about 20 years in the FBO space. I had Hangar 10 up in Kansas City, worked at a small FBO up there as well, then moved down to Florida. But for the past 2.5 years, I've been doing FBO consulting with the goal of starting a couple of locations to operate FBOs. So this is one of 2 that we're working on simultaneously. The other one's up in Kansas City. We're working diligently on hiring people. We've conducted a handful of interviews today, and there's a couple after this meeting as well. So I think that we're moving right along. There's construction, so it's, it's nice to see. So we're thrilled to be here.
Yeah, so an update for you guys from where we're at. So Cloud9 has officially closed with Glenn this morning. So Glenn will get his funds in the morning because it's after 3 o'clock, but we just got that done. We've closed with the city. Refueler leases have been secured. They'll be here in about 2 to 3 weeks. Our transition date is tentative. It looks like December 12th. Signs are up on Hangar 2. Signs will go up here the day before. We've started to renovate the lobby, new flooring, a little better LED lighting, new paint. We're gonna, that felt like a surprise to Glenn, we're gonna call it the Crabtree Terminal and do something to honor Glenn's time here. So we're gonna take care of that and take the lead with Caden on that. Insurance is in place. We have insurance on Hangar 1A down the way for property coverage, and then we also have 2 policies in place. Glenn's current policy, because we gave him an FBO service agreement, he's gonna run facilities here for the next 40 days, 30 days, while we're in construction and transition, and then we will take over with the Apex Jet Center brand. December 12th right now is the tentative date. Why we gave Glenn an FBO service agreement was because he is operating under our current, now as of today, lease agreement. So he'll operate while we kind of do our renovations and finish. We've got $40,000 worth of new lobby furniture for both facilities here and Hangar 2, sitting in Hangar 2. So when you guys have your next airport board meeting, you will see a completely renovated space here and next door. We're moving the window to the lobby tomorrow and putting a door in as a second transient lobby for Apex at Hangar 2. We are in the process of securing a fuel bid with either Av Fuel or Phillips. Phillips rep was here today. We're converted to X1 software. Kyle's doing all the training on X1 software with his team. We plan to staff probably 4 employees on day 1. Hours of operation should be, they're gonna be seasonal, so we're thinking about 7 to 6 with after-hours fueling during the winter, and then getting seasonal hours longer during the spring and the summer. We just wanted to be here today. If you guys had any questions, the process from August when we had our approval to today has been onerous, to say the least, but we had some transition changes. We were working on a clean version of our assignment that we have of Glenn's agreement. We've got that ready to go. The last note to tie to that is we have 3 different bids from Innovative, who you guys worked with on the fueling system. We have a bid for a 20K tank that Toby and Park Hill have looked at and where it would go located to the new tanks. We have a bid on the 12K tank that you guys originally signed up on. The 20K tank is in Stroud and brand new. And then we're working on a 3rd bid right now where they're taking the concrete and the electrical out of the bid and letting our guys do it to try to save a little bit of money. We will move forward on the fuel system as we get open and transition. We will fuel from the refuelers, both the 5,000 and the 3,000 gallon one, through a skid starting day 1, and then immediately transition to the new fuel system and install. And we'll be giving you those updates to Billy and you, Chairman, and everybody else as we have them. So if you have any questions, we just wanted to open the floor, and Kyle can answer on the labor side, the structure side. We can both answer on the brand change, which is obvious from the last time I was here in August. So just glad to answer any questions you might have.
The refuelers that you've got coming in, that's 100 low lead and jet,
So we're starting with the 5,000 and 3,000 gallon both jet tanks, and then we're going to lease a 100 low lead refueler, depending on which brand we go with, Av or Phillips. Phillips has quoted us 100 low lead truck to use. Yeah. Great. Glenn's got his trucks. Our intention is to immediately sell Glenn's trucks and replace those with the ones we have. They're part of our APA or asset purchase agreement with Glenn. One other note, I did secure 2 courtesy vehicles, Buick Encores. So I have a relationship with Wilson in Cadillac in Stillwater, Aaron Wilson, and he's going to provide us 2 new cars every 10 months as part of a kind of a advertising / promotional deal. So the first Buick Encore is in the hangar, the black one. The white one will be here when we open on December 12th. So we will always have a brand new vehicle every 10 months. They'll rotate those vehicles to a brand new one. So we're going to have great courtesy vehicles as well. We have several items ordered for both lounges related to free beverages, sodas, water, and so when we transition customers. And we're going to just really kick off our marketing now that we literally closed today at about 10:30, I think. So
Great.
a lot of things going on.
Big changes.
Yeah.
Sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Where will your skid go, and when do you anticipate that?
The skid for the transition of the fuel,
Mhm.
it's from Phillips. It's to be with Phillips.
Right, where physically
On the field.
will it be located?
That's with Brian Lohman, so I'll figure that out when we get ready to do that. We signed the refueler lease today.
Okay, we probably need to powwow on that because we may need to airspace that. So anytime we build anything on the airport, we have to submit a notice of proposed construction to FAA. There's a 45-day
Absolutely.
lag on that, so I want to get out in front of that early so that doesn't hold us up from actually selling.
Sure. A couple of the notes that made me think of that. We're working with the maintenance group, so there was a maintenance group in Stillwater that left Stillwater Airport, and Kyle has some familiarity with them. Had some difficulties, and they require badges because they're commercial now. Their maintenance guy moved to Cushing. He's been there 20 years. He's going to come. He's one of the friends with the electrician that's doing all our work here. He's going to come interview to take the lease on Glenn's maintenance facility so we can have full maintenance. We're working with a couple of different flight schools and reaching out to people. So it's our goal to put full service maintenance and a flight school back in operation as quickly as possible because we want those fuel sales as well.
I've had quite a few questions about the flight training already.
Yeah.
So people are excited.
Any other questions? All right. I don't believe there's any item or action needed on item 9, so no action will be taken.
Okay, cool.
Item number 10, an update on the status of the airport improvement projects.
Yeah.
Director Young.
I will be turning this item over to Mr. Toby Baker with Park Hill Engineering, who will be providing a brief summary.
So the primary thing we wanted to update you on was the status of the parallel taxiway and apron construction project. We are about 80% of the way through the preliminary engineering report for that. So we've set the alignment and the grades for the new taxiway and are pulling earthwork quantities. There will be a small amount of land that we need to acquire from the Martins. And Caden and Eddie and I met last week to discuss that, to coordinate a meeting with them. What we're going to do on that is appraise kind of a tract A, B, and C on their property. They have 15 acres that is on the west side of the runway that the city has already purchased part of their property previously and split their property. So Shalon and I had a preliminary meeting with them some months back and basically said we could potentially just buy a couple acres that we need for the project. We could buy closer to 4 acres that would allow us a kind of developable area on their property, but then that terrain kind of drops off as it goes down towards the road. And so some of that's going to be less developable, but we wanted to have appraisals on all 3 options so that if they come back and say, well, we don't want to sell off just another little piece, we want to just sell the whole 15 acres and be done, we could have established that value. The FAA requires that we follow a federal appraisal process that involves a preliminary appraisal, and then we have a review appraiser come in, and whatever the review appraiser sets the value at, that's what we have to initially offer to the landowner. So we'll be continuing to work with Caden on that and getting those meetings scheduled with the landowner in order to continue that acquisition process. So as far as schedule, some of this will be up to what the Aeronautics Commission and FAA direct us, but we anticipate that the project will go out for bid in early summer, and then likely construction won't start until early fall of next year. You may recall that the city submitted a request for, I'm not supposed to call it earmark funding anymore, I forget their new acronym for it.
Community project funding.
Community project funding, and so there is some additional funding for the terminal apron expansion that was included in that request. Our understanding is that our request is still alive, but of course that bill has not been passed yet. So what will happen as far as the scope of the taxiway and apron project is we will build a small portion of apron expansion, essentially what would be immediately in front of a future terminal building, and then depending on whether or not we get that additional funding, the scope of the apron expansion may increase. Any questions on any of that?
Sounds organized to me.
Are you spearheading the funding and monitoring of the funds available and the grants available?
So on the traditional funding side with FAA, and I've got to quit calling them the Aeronautics Commission, they are now the Oklahoma Department of Aerospace and Aeronautics, but OAC sounds so much better than ODA, so I'm working on that. On that side of it, yes, that we are. As far as on the congressional side of it, no, that is something that the city has handled.
The city handles that?
The city has made
Okay.
that submission. And as a reminder, we also did submit an ATP application for the other pot of money specifically for the terminal building. But at this point, there have been no announcements on the selection of FY24 project. So we've kind of got a couple different non-traditional possibilities, but those are still up in the air. But the funding for the parallel taxiway and at least a portion of the apron through traditional FAA discretionary funding, that is the one that is for certain.
That was NIPIA?
Say again?
NIPIA?
So there's multiple pots of FAA money that would come to that. One of them is your non-primary entitlement funds. And I think that's what you're referring
That's what I'm
to
talking
is NIPIAS. But the bulk of it will be FAA discretionary funding. That's the over and above your entitlements that are required for a project of this size.
To add to that, the City of Edmond, Scott Rigby, and their lobbyist has been actively engaged in the community project funding. And so we hear changes, we've heard changes, Scott and I spoke last week. However, until they have a funding bill, we're not sure what it'll come out to be.
So at this particular point, funding isn't
Guaranteed.
right.
No, sir.
Okay, I guess that's what I was.
We might clarify what is guaranteed and what isn't. The funding for the parallel taxiway and a portion of terminal apron expansion is guaranteed through traditional channels.
That's not community project.
That is not community project funding. The funding for one pot of funding for the terminal building, as well as a much larger apron expansion in front of the new terminal building, that is the community project funding. That is one that is not guaranteed. And then the ATP application that we also have in for the terminal building, we also don't know about. So the taxiway and a portion of apron expansion will move forward. That money is secure, assuming Congress doesn't change the AIP program.
Okay.
But the other two are still up in the air.
Thanks, appreciate it.
I got a couple, I have two things I wanted to mention if I can. Chairman, kind of just two things I didn't mention. I wanted to give these to you guys. I spent some time with the sign company, and this is something I'm willing to participate in or help. I think the exterior sign on the road could use some upgrading, and this is just something we put together. And we can talk about this at maybe a future board meeting if possible, but
You don't like our postmodern sculpture?
well, you know, I want us to get into the 21st century, so I think it's something we could do, and ignore the apex on it. He put that on there this morning. We just told him to put Guthrie Edmond Regional. We're talking about doing something out there. We're willing to participate in any way. We think it's really important that when people are driving down the road, that they see changes happening outside on the roadway, they're gonna know what's happening in here. And if we look toward what could be, crossing our fingers, a new terminal grant, I think this is a step at some point we're gonna wanna take. So I'm really willing and ready at future board meeting to talk to you about my participation or my company's participation and help with that. The second note I just didn't mention is we will be working, the utilities to Mr. Burgess's 2 tanks are tied to my hangar. And I've been paying those for 18 months, and he has not reimbursed me. So there's some concern as we work with you guys, and Kyle and I are on the ground every day, those tanks becoming dormant, not being used. I'll be having conversations with Mr. Burgess and Butch, his kind of right-hand man, about what the plan is to remove them, get them off the ground or whatever. So just something that's in our works, and it's important to us because we don't want those tanks to sit dormant, and they've been a little bit, they will be pretty quickly after we get on the ground.
If I can remember the council, those tanks, there's not a lease of those tanks. He owns the tanks, but there's not a ground lease, there's no permission that he has for them to be there.
So basically, it's trespass to real property.
Yes, it is. At any point we wanted to, we can give notice to remove those.
Yes, I think so.
We haven't wanted to go down that road to this point. But
Let's get our refuelers.
Right, we're saying after December, we're just, and I think I can talk Calvin into just actually being reasonable where we could acquire the tanks and move them to the Kansas City location, where Kyle's second location is, and then put either the brand new 12,000 gallon tank right there, or next door where we proposed it. So we have options. Some options are less expensive than others, but I think because utilities are tied to my hangar, there's no language about me paying for those. So we have some options. So, but we'll get the refuelers on the ground, and those are just my last 2 notes. The sign out front is really important to me, and like I said, just glad to participate.
The abandonment of those tanks was an issue that I raised when I first got on the board and we started talking about this in terms of having orphan property basically laying around the airport. And I was concerned that, that we would have some kind of issue. But I know that there can also be environmental issues that go along when tanks just sit there for a while, and then you get ground sea fish and things like that. So that is, I appreciate that.
Okay. And we appreciate you guys. We look forward to working with you. Thanks for allowing us to give you an update today.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Item number 11 is the director's report. Director Young, thank you.
I'll try to keep this really brief. I wanted to update the board on our ODL system, and our airport engineer can jump in anytime. Our ODL system are the omnidirectional approach lighting system, which is at the end of the runway. They're the very bright, they're on the 5 stations, the bright white flashing lights as you approach the runway at the end of runway 16. The many pilots have noticed our ALS unserviceable modem, and they believe that our PAPIs are out. I received lots of calls about those, but those will be their own modems, and the PAPIs are out. Our PAPIs are operable. The ODLs, on the other hand, are unfortunately a different story. Staff is working with Flash Technologies to obtain a new quote because when the previous estimate was made, more of the stations were operable. I want to report that upon seeing the proposed estimates for the odals, I immediately began looking at other options because they were a pricey fix. But after talking to other professionals, I've learned that the airfield electrical systems are so unique, especially odals are so unique, that to do it the right way, we'll want to go with the right company that messes with them all the time. So we're probably going to have to look at going with Flash Technologies. I will keep the board updated on their repair as we look at what that estimate's going to look like. The Santa fly-in, the date is tentatively set for Saturday, December 16th, from 1 to 3 p.m. I haven't said anything out about it, but mark your calendars for that. Rick's Chocolates and Coffees has generously provided complimentary hot chocolate, as they do every year. The Santa has also been scheduled, and some say he bears an uncanny resemblance to Mr. Peter Van Pelt of KSA Engineering. He'll be coming back and volunteering for that for us. The Guthrie Chamber Coffee will be hosted at the airport the Wednesday before the Santa fly-in, not only just to boost your support for the airport as a whole, but to try to gain some more interest for that event. Mr. Glenn Crabtree stepped out. Retirement reception has been scheduled for Friday, January 12th from 3 to 5 p.m. Formal invitations will be sent to you all, City Council and local elected officials here shortly. I am requesting that any photos you may have of Glenn or photos of the old airport be shared with me. I'm working on compiling those photos to be used for the event. I've already bothered Glenn enough about his photos, so I'd appreciate if any of you had anything you could send over. I'd really appreciate that. And I want to thank him as well for allowing us to use his Cessna 140 at the Guthrie Public Library Storytime event, which happened on November 8th at 10:30. It was very well attended. Multiple kids showed up to hear a story put on by the public library, and then we were able to go back into Glenn's hangar, and they were able to, get into the plane and take some photos, and it was a pretty good time. Finally, I was going to say, and Toby will catch me on this, the Oklahoma Department of Aerospace and Aeronautics, the ODA, completed a runway pavement inspection on November 9th. The pavement condition inspection helps the department have an overview of the health of the pavements across the state system. It also helps provide them with helpful background in programming future capital projects. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Request comments from the members of the airport board. Member Young.
Nothing.
Dr. Goliker.
I would still like to see some more discussion and action taken against some fly-ins, like some of the Young Eagles flights for kids and things here, and possibly to get the OU flight school, the flight program back here for next summer, hopefully.
One of the things that I have been working on is to go along with that, just to let you know, is to bring a group of young sales professionals, some of whom have interest in aviation sales to the airport in connection with the Challenger Sales Institute, and getting EAA to do a fly-in for them, and that will be in March. So in order to secure one of the Florida schools who has an interest in aviation to come to the event, I had to promise some kind of aviation time to them. So I started working on that with EAA for March. So, Member Wallace.
Nothing, sir.
Councilman Williams.
Nothing.
Mr. Gee.
No, nothing here.
And I think that's all I have. So is there a motion to adjourn? Motion. There's been a motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion made, seconded, and laid upon the table. There's no discussion on the motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Having received majority according to the Constitution Board, the motion passes and we stand adjourned.
Okay, then.